Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. Y'all come on in. Come on in. Hope y'all had a good Thursday. I have to check my settings real quick just to make sure that we're good and you all can see me. I'm definitely excited about today's live. We're on day 19 of our live. Hey Tika, how you doing? Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. We're on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And everyone who does not know me, thank you, sis. I love your hair. Everyone who does not know me, I'm Tiffany Newton. I'm a master certified health and life coach. And I've been in the mental health space for the past couple of years. And I have definitely I'm sorry, I'm up here trying to read what Tika said too while I'm talking. But thank y'all so much for joining. Um, but God has called me to the co-parenting space, and that's where this challenge has really been birthed from. Is the vision that God has put in my heart in regards to co-parenting and what I should do in this space. And since mental health is still close to my heart, I still serve in that way as also. So, but I definitely help parents, co-parents, establish and maintain healthy relationships with one another so they can raise emotionally healthy children without experiencing all the drama of long-term communication issues. And they can do that by using my child first method. And we've been talking about that over the last couple of weeks ish. And today is day 19 of my life challenge to my journey to co-parenting. And I just appreciate everyone who has joined me thus far. It has really been good to just you all to join and for you all to meet, to hear your comments and see your comments, read your comments, and just get your feedback. So I definitely appreciate that. And today is a very special day because I have my friend Terrence Robinson that's going to be joining us today. And remember, I want to remind you all before he even comes on, my focus is always going to be the child, and you will find out the same thing with him. So everything that we're going to talk about is going to be for the best interest of the child. And I think that should be our focus, right? Yeah, I think so. So, but and we are continuing our conversation on the involvement with the child. And Terrence, he is, oh, my baby's joining. Hey, Jordan. Terrence, he is a father. He's an entrepreneur, and he's a registered mediator and family custody strategist. So, I mean, just grab your coffee, tea, whatever, because this is going to be a really good conversation. So, I'm about to add him to the live now. Hey, Terrence, you see me?
Hey Tiffany, I can see you. How you doing?
Good, good, good. Good to see you.
I see you
You
too.
know, I'm just so excited for you to be here today, and just briefly tell everyone about you and what it is that you do. I know I just did a simple introduction, but hopefully everyone on Instagram can hear him as well.
Um,
But but yeah, just introduce yourself.
okay. Like Tiffany said, my name is Terrence Robinson. I'm a retired 25-year Navy veteran. Um, I am a family custody strategist, and I know that's kind of play on words. Like, wait, is he an attorney? I'm not. I'm the guy the attorneys call when they can't get things situated in court. So, like she said, I'm a registered mediator for the state of Alabama. I'm currently working on the state of Georgia as well. But what I do is when families can't meet resolution, and it's better to call a mediator to help with a situation as opposed to letting someone in a robe tell you what to do in your cases. It's better to keep the power in your own hands than to let somebody who doesn't know you or your family make the decision for you.
Awesome, awesome. So that, I mean, that's a pretty powerful role nowadays,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely needed.
Yeah, yeah, because and I know we've had conversation even, leading up to this live. And I mean, I tell you, when we were talking, I was like, oh, I want to talk about that. I want to write down, this question. So we're just gonna jump right on in,
Okay,
okay?
let's do it.
And one thing that we were talking about was, what are you seeing in your profession and even personal? You can get as personal as you want to, um, but what are you seeing personally and professionally? How important is the father's role to the child's development and emotional health?
Well, that's actually a great question because I think we undermine the importance of a father's role in the child's life because we think that as long as he's paying child support, that's all he needs to do. We see it play out in our social media, television, movies, music. Uh, there's this lackluster for father's involvement, and I often hear people say things like, a mother's job is to protect, and that's not true. The father starts the role. Life starts with the father, right? He gives the seed to the mother. She births the child. Both roles are equally important because one can't have the child without the other.
Yeah.
The issue, what I see personally in my own life is, I went through a really bad divorce about 11 years ago. And my son was a newborn at the time. And we have a great relationship now, but I had to fight to get there. So, what does that fight look like? The fight looks like you spend several $1,000s in court paying attorneys who don't care about your kids. Their job is to fight for their client.
Mhm.
The role of the judge is to follow the law, and we don't get involved in legislation, especially in the African American community among men. We go and we want to vote for the president, but we don't vote at the local level, and we don't know what the agenda is of the person at the local level. So
Mhm.
what I see professionally now that I'm a family custody strategist, the way I got to that term was I was really thrown into this career. I didn't even know that mediators uh, don't necessarily have to be attorneys.
Mhm.
I thought that mediators were attorneys that went to law school, and although the majority of them are, there's a small group of us that are not. Oftentimes, I go to court and people think, "Oh, what law school did you go to?" I'm like, "I didn't. I was just a pissed off dad." So, what I wound up doing was I studied all the family laws in Alabama. I actually did apply for law school, and I wound up not going because I didn't think that would solve the problem. So I asked myself, how can I solve the problem? How can I keep other men like myself who had no criminal record? I was a very senior enlisted in the military at the time, on the precipice of retirement, active in my church, active in my community. I was a high school teacher in my civilian job. So here I am, the salt of the earth, but I was treated like a pariah in the legal system. Um,
Mhm.
and that became very problematic. So as someone who's in the military, I looked at it from a war perspective. And when you're fighting a war, you have to know your enemy and who is the enemy. You have multiple enemies. You have the system. You have family law itself, which is a subset of that said system. You have your spouse or soon to be ex-spouse. You even have yourself. What demons and devils do you deal with? And then you even have
Mhm.
society. What societal norms are you battling against? Because nobody believes you when you say, "Oh, I'm a good dad or a good parent, good non-custodial parent." Well, how can you be when the law is stacked against you? So,
Right.
off on a tangent. I know you have questions to ask, but I want to make sure I answer that question. But what you see professionally and personally, and I think is so much in that where I've dealt with this issue for 11 years now, and you know what sparked me to launch my company, which is Mr. LLC. Mr. is an acronym, is MSTR, and it stands for Men Standing for Their Rights. Because
Mhm.
as a man who had no criminal background, secret clearance in the government, I get vetted by the FBI every 10 years, and I was treated like I was a criminal. I was put on supervised visitation
Mhm.
for a period of like 4 years with no evidence of anything. It just literally
Right.
made up fabricated stories. And I said, well, if they're going to do me like that, who else are they doing this to? So that led me
Right.
into judges and looking into lawyers. And I used to go down to Jefferson County Courthouse and just sit in the back of courtrooms and watch. and I would take note. And so I did that for like 7 years. I do what the military taught me to do. There's a level of overt and covert operations that we learn. I'm not going to get into what that is, but I pay very close attention to things, and I never let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. My mother taught me that many years ago, and I've learned that it is our own people that cause some of the issues in our families. And so the best thing you can do as a family person is, whether it be the mother or father, is keep control, maintain control, but then also figure out the best course of action for the child, because the state standard is supposed to be what's in the best interest of the child.
Right, right.
Excuse me.
Yeah, and you know what? It was one thing. Thank you so much, Dorcas, for joining on IG. Hopefully, you all can hear pretty well. And it was interesting. One thing that stood out to me, what you said, was how it's so many different enemies that we have to deal with. You know, we have to deal with ourselves. We have to deal with the system. We have to deal with the courts. We have to deal with each other. And how much better would it be if we could at least eliminate one of those? You know, can we eliminate, us fighting against each other? If it's especially if we want the best for our child. So, and that is really the heart of the child first method. And I know what you're doing will really, it will help to really undergird what I'm doing as well, in regards to this program. When I talked about the involvement with the child yesterday, I gave 3 words that I wanted everyone to remember, and that was listen, share, and consider. And those 3 words are things that we have to always think about when it comes to our child, when it comes to involvement with our child, and when we're actually dealing with our ex.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you, because you talked about, how we have to pretty much deal with one another in regards to, I guess, in the beginning, especially when we don't necessarily know what the other one is doing. We want we want to think the best of our ex, but we really don't know what they're going to do in the courtroom. I know we've talked about, hey, we thought things were going to be okay at one point, but we turn around and they do the complete opposite. Because for whatever reason, they have not let go of bitterness and whatever. So what is it that, from a father's perspective, what should fathers do to fight for their children, when they are in that situation where things have, where it seems like everybody is an enemy, so, and what strategies can they use in doing that? And I also want you to come from the perspective of still, them having a place where, okay, they're fighting for their child, they're fighting for what's right, but then also, how can mothers kind of understand the process? I guess that's the best way I can explain.
So to make sure I got the questions right, what can fathers do to, I guess, stay involved? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Or get involved?
to fight for their children, especially if they're in that position where the mom has said, hey, you're gonna be able to see him whenever you want, this is gonna be a civil divorce, don't worry about it. But then
So
you turn around and it's the complete opposite.
Here's what I see oftentimes, especially so to start from the beginning, most people are ignorant to family law, and most people are ignorant to the practices of attorneys and what goes on. They know in theory, and they know in part because everybody has that cousin, brother, uncle, dad, somebody they know in their family who's been through this, and they can empathize, but they don't really know why something happened. They can't understand why this person didn't get custody, or oh, you could just go down there and ask for custody. No, you can't. That's not how that works. So I encourage people to, one, get involved in your local politics. on your day off, and it's going to take some work on all parts, is to go down to your local family court or domestic relations. And the difference between family court and domestic relations is domestic relations mean they were married, and family court means that they weren't. So you got a baby mama and you got your ex-wife. And I think the issue is we don't know. So when we go to court, we think what we saw on Paternity Court or Judge Judy or Judge Joe Brown or whatever court show we watch, and we think that's real court, and it's not. And you're going to go down there and be sadly mistaken and wind up leaving with some type of protection from abuse order, or one of the things they do, you go to court and it just be a status hearing. You want to say your piece and you can't. Like, well, we're not here for that today. We're here just to get a status or an update on what's going on. Meanwhile, you haven't seen your kid in months. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens when you haven't seen your kid in months and the child is only 2? See, 6 months is a long time to a 2-year-old. That child will forget you. And now you get delayed. Oh, and then boom, COVID hits. Oh, now you hadn't seen your kid in a year. Now the child's 3. You see what I'm saying? And so with COVID hit, we were doing, now they put out an issue, or they issued, the courts of Alabama issued a standard saying that COVID is not a reason to keep a child from the non-custodial parent. Mm-hmm. And some custodial parents took that opportunity to say, oh, I don't want my child to get sick, so you can't see him until COVID's lifted. Well, how long did COVID stay affecting the nation?
A while.
More than a year, right? So a lot of us non-custodial parents went a year without seeing our kid. But you know what they didn't do? They didn't stop child support. And they gave referendums on mortgages and rent, but you still had to find a way to pay your child support or you risk going to jail. So you're paying for a child and you can't even see your child. And then when you go to court and say, hey, the custodial parent kept this child from me for a year, they don't do anything about that, because it doesn't look good for you to arrest someone who's supposed to be civil and they're not. So it's a win-win for the custodial parent. And so the judge is like, well, look, we know who votes. Women vote, men don't. So let's make sure we give the women all the, I guess I won't say rights, but we don't want, let's imagine if a bunch of moms got locked up, how fast would that be on CNN?
Oh, shoot.
So when election time comes up, right. So when election time comes up in 2024, what happens? That same judge who just locked up 100 moms, you're not going to get reelected.
Right. He's not reelected.
Right. And where does the judge's income come from?
From the people.
No, from the state.
Oh, well, we pay the state.
Exactly. But they don't care about that. They care what the state says. So when the judge getting paid from the state and the state's not getting child support, and the state says, hey, we're going to charge 7.5% interest. If you don't pay this, you're not paying us, because we're the lawmakers. We're the judges. We're the ones that make the decision. So even if the dad's like, hey, I'm a great dad, I buy the kid everything, where's our child support? We don't care about the mom. We want our money. So basically the state are pimps.
Wow. Just
and that's what I tell people.
Another moneymaker.
Another moneymaker.
Now, this is absolutely crazy. Now, anyone who's watching, please, if you have any questions to ask Terrence, we're going to take the time, at least the last 5 minutes of this live, to answer any questions that you might have. So feel free to put it in the chat. If you're on Instagram, if you want to see us, we're on Facebook and YouTube. We're on the Tribe's YouTube channel. We're also on my Facebook page at Tiffany D. Newton. So you should be able to definitely get in and see us if you want to see us. So I got one more question, because it's just crazy to me how the system is. And I know when we were talking, and I know I've also mentioned this on one of my lives as well, is, the agreement that we sign, during our divorce decree, or that's on our divorce decree in regards to custody. What is that? I mean, is it something that we have to uphold? Is it something that, what is the ramifications if we don't, if the father does not see the child every other weekend? If we let him see him every weekend, is it going to be somebody coming after us? Or, is anybody holding us accountable? How does that really work?
we're gonna need another hour on this Zoom
Oh,
to explain that one. But and I'm gonna try to give you as short as I can. The most
okay.
important part is a divorce decree is an order, and you need to
Mhm.
document every time someone violates that order. But you
Okay.
don't want to get into a fight of tit for tat. You want to be able to work it out because the state guidelines, and that's exactly what that is. It's a state guideline. We all know what it is. First, third, and fifth weekend, or every other weekend, however this is written up in the order, and the attorneys will write that up. You split holidays, two week visits in the summer, which is crazy. I figured out why they broke that up too. It didn't make sense to me why the non-custodial parent would get two week periods. I'm like, why not just give me one whole month? If you
Right.
get one whole month, that will constitute child support. So to keep
Mhm.
from having to pay the non-custodial parent child support,
Ain't that a
we're
mess?
taking two-week periods in the summertime.
Are you
So
serious?
listen, it took me a minute to figure that out. I was like, wait a minute. But the Wizard of Oz said this: follow the yellow brick road. And that yellow brick road is the goal. And it works in anything. My undergrad is in business administration and entrepreneurship. And understanding business is, I tell people all the time, if you go down the rabbit hole and follow the money, it all makes sense when you find out who's getting paid.
Wow.
So now you can set up orders where I don't have two-week periods. I have it where I get my son on the last day of school and I keep him to about mid-July, and I give him back to his mom so she gets a, a break in July. She can spend the summer with him. But it took years to get there. It was constant fighting back and forth. I'm in the six figures in how much I've paid attorneys over the last 10 years. And,
Crazy.
I can afford to do that, but I've drained my retirement, savings, just trying to get access to my kid. And that's why I started this company in helping fathers get custody of their kids, because there are a few moms that go through. In fact, I pulled some research earlier this week. As of 2018 or 2020, I think it's 2020, now 18.3% of fathers have custody of their kids now, where in 1994 it was only about 12%. So we're up a few, but it's still, moms at 88% still have custody. We thought it was in the 90th percentile, but it is more and more dads are fighting for custody of their kids, because we're the Gen Xers that didn't have our dads growing up in the 80s and 90s. And now that we're dads, we're fighting for our kids. And a lot of us are winning. My brother has custody of his daughter. My four of my friends have custody of their sons and daughters. And I think it's great to see dads get custody, because we say we want equal rights, right? But we don't want it in
Right.
family court. Why don't we have equal rights in family court? Because nobody's going to piss off moms, because moms vote,
Mm.
and judges got to get elected, and politicians got to get elected, and they make their money from the child support that's paid to the state. It's all
Wow.
a shell game.
So how can we take control? I mean, how can we? I mean, because I'm the type of person, I'm not gonna let anybody tell me how to run my household.
Glad you asked. One is you hire somebody like me who's a mediator, because I take it
Okay.
out of the judge's hands. I sit down with the mom and dad in separate rooms and we hash out a deal. I'm a negotiator. That's what I do. But I'm looking at it from the standpoint of what's in the best interest of the child. I'll tell you what the state of Alabama did just in last year's election in 2022. They have I had to write it down because I always forget it. I want to make sure I say it right so the people can see it. It is alabamaparentingplans.org. Go to that website, and I highly encourage people to get familiar with that. So it's Alabama Parenting Plans with an S
I'm gonna put it in the
.org.
chat too.
Mhm. What that did was Alabama made it where
Alabama parenting.
plans.org. And with child psychologists, therapists, clergy, like they put together a group of people to figure out the best practices, because we from a single mother home. If we could get the prison population down, if we would just fix the family dynamics and the family values that we once had in America. Studies have also shown, I forgot who put the study out. I want to say the CDC, but I'm not sure who it was. But there was a study that said that fathers in the home, whether it be single fathers or married, you have a 90% chance of that child not going to prison than you do if it was just the mom. Just by virtue of having a father around would
Wow.
increase the rate of that child not going to prison significantly.
Wow. I
We
wonder
never talk
why
about
that is. I mean, because I know some strong mamas. I'm a strong
Oh,
mama.
yeah. I was raised by one. My dad wasn't around, and I look at it as a way but I had uncles. See, this was in the '80s. I had a grandfather, uncles, my youth pastor, my senior pastor. I had men around all the time. We had coaches. We had male teachers. I'm a former high school teacher. I taught in Birmingham City Schools. Very few male teachers. Very
Mhm.
few. And it saddens me because I was married to an educator. I heard the horror stories. I knew she was on the female shakedown team, and she would have to pat the girls down before they came to class and make sure she would break up the fights. And most of the fights that I broke up when I was teaching in Birmingham City Schools were girls fighting girls over girls. The boys
Wow.
don't even fight anymore. And so, that to me, that became problematic. I said, you know what, I've got to do more than just be a teacher and do lesson plans and educate the kids, because the kids by the time they get to high school, they're so traumatized. We had my last year teaching high school was 2014-15 school year. And that year we had 27 pregnant freshmen. So
Wow.
what does that tell you? You're having sex in 8th grade because you gave birth in this first semester. So if you're 13 and you're pregnant, that was 2014. Those children are now 9 years old. My son is only 11, so those kids are now in school with my son.
Wow.
But so we're breaking out, we're devolving our society based on our common practices and societal norms. But we fix it by getting the family back.
Right, right. And I'm definitely pro family. And I'll say this, it doesn't matter how our family looks, whether we're um, from a single parent, co-parenting, blended family, family, you know, it matters that we are one family,
Mm-hmm.
one team.
Yeah.
Because if we're not, then, just like you said, all of these issues that come up with kids, they're going to happen, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be as emotionally healthy as they should. So please, if anyone has any questions, because I got a bunch of questions, because I'm going to ask one more question before we go. Um, you were talking about father involvement. How can I know not everyone can empty out their retirement. Not every man, every father can take off from work every time because they're having to pay child support. They're having to work overtime in order to just to pay child support. And if they're married, support the family that they have. So how is it that fathers that are co-parenting with their mothers, how can they be more involved with
Uh,
their children, especially if they're living in a different state?
I'm gonna try to link a bunch of answers together because I remember another question you asked me earlier. So first, the short answer is a lot of mothers aren't gonna like this, but I'll say give the dad custody.
Now,
If
they
you
ain't gonna like that.
They ain't gonna like it, but it's the truth. If you know the stat that statistically your child has a 90th a chance increased by 90% to not go to prison if the father's raising them. It's, well, I don't trust him like that. Well, at some point you were a new mom too, and you didn't know nothing. If he don't know that, he'll figure it out because he has to. And if you didn't trust him that much, why you lay down with him? That's what it boils down to. So you're trusting enough to lay down with him. Now you made your bed, now lie in it, so to
And how
speak.
many daddies gonna want their kids full time?
Whether you want it or not, you man up. You did the crime, now do the time.
Yeah.
You don't want to. And so here's the other answer to that is, if that doesn't work, do the family care plan. Sit down and write out a custody agreement among both parties. And then I would say, and also it's a tactic with that. When he sees how hard it is to be a single parent, he'll give the child back to you and as much money as you want to do whatever you got to do, because he realizes I can go to work. I'm like, here, going back to your mama, and I will gladly give you. I ain't got to pay the state. I'll pay you direct. Girl, I'll give you $1,000, $2,000, what you want. Matter of fact, let's get remarried, move back in. I got to take care of this family. We got to make this work some kind of way because I can't do this by myself. So that might be another way. Another thing is education and training. Men need to know their worth, and they don't. I talked about that earlier, saying that we have to get to a point where we know that if you get a woman pregnant, your life is over. It's now about that family's life. You must do what it takes to make sure that the family is provided for, protected, taken care of, And I don't mean totality. I mean, it's a team, because he's going to get tired. He's going to get, weary. He might not know everything, but together he has that. He's supposed to have a help meet. She helps meet the need of the house. It's not supposed to be where he did it by himself, but we're so individualized now. I can do my own thing, and I don't want a teammate. You got to be a team in this thing, because it's hard. What I've noticed in families is, I played football in high school only 1 year, but that team.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
Yeah, that team mindset. I want to make sure people are like, oh, he played football. No, I wasn't good. But I understood the level of team. If the quarterback, how many quarterbacks do you have on a team?
One.
But as a quarterback, I don't care how good you are. If the other person's like, well, I'm a quarterback too, I want to throw the ball sometimes. No, I need you to run to the end zone so I can throw the ball to you, or run to the first down so I can get this ball to you before I get hit by this 300-pound dude over here. That's the team dynamic you got to have. And that same mindset goes into a family. Whatever strength he has, she's got to meet up with that and go, okay, babe, what do you need? And he's got to go, okay, I need you to do this while I do this. But all that comes from the dating process. You shouldn't marry somebody who doesn't have that team mindset.
Right.
You shouldn't get pregnant by anybody that doesn't have that team mindset. But what I'm seeing a lot of now, since I'm back on the dating scene, is so many women choose to be single mothers. A lot of women aren't coming from divorce situations anymore. They go to a sperm bank. They go, it might be just a one-off where they meet a guy. I had a woman a couple years ago that I met on a dating app. She said she was looking for a guy to get her pregnant and sign over his rights. I said, oh, okay. Cool.
They do that too?
Listen, that was just a couple years ago. I've had a couple do that, but not since then. Dating apps are just like a whole nother beast, but they're out there, and it's more than just her. And it made me think, like, wow, how many women are asking to be single moms because they feel like, I don't need a man to do this life. I can do it as long as I have a child to love. That's all I need. And I'm like, but what about the other side of that child when he or she asks, Mama, who's my daddy? And you say, I don't know, the petri dish. What then? That's a selfish act. You're denying your child the right to know the other side of their DNA.
Yeah.
So we don't value family anymore.
Yeah. And that definitely has to change. I tell you, you are preaching everything that I have been talking about throughout my life, just in these last 30 minutes. Now, Daniel, he asked a question in the chat. He says, why is there not as many resources readily available for single men as they are? I'm sure he meant for single women.
That is a great question, Daniel. Here's what I've thought about. Remember what I said earlier about money? If you follow the yellow brick road, women make up 2/3 of the national GDP, right? GDP is gross domestic product. So if the nation of women, and women outnumber men 2-1, right? Globally. So if women outnumber us and women hold 2/3 of America's debt, if they're spending the money, why would we give the men who are fiscally responsible? Let's give it to the women so they can put the money back into the system and pay more taxes via sales tax and ad valorem tax and property tax. They're spending the money and men don't spend. So when men don't spend, men are a bad bet by the government. The government's not trying to get men resources. Why would they do that when they're not going to put the money back into the government? Let's give it to the money. Let's give the money to the women because they're fiscally irresponsible.
All right. Wow.
Now, speaking of that, I'm not saying that. That's what the government is saying.
Right.
What they're doing. You can Google everything I'm saying. It's going to come up.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important for us to, when you were talking, I was just thinking about, nonprofit organizations, and organizations like yours, when you have a passion in a certain area, when you see a need that's there and you're like, man, Daniel, if you're one of those people where you're like, man, single men really need some resources. I really feel passionate about this area. That might be part of your purpose, to actually start a business, where you are offering those services. Because just like Terrence said, I mean, the money is not there to be given to us from the government.
That's actually why I started Mister, because in 2016, for a buddy of mine that's a Birmingham police officer, and he would call me. And he's got over 20 years on the force now. Back then, I think he had like 16, 17 years on the force. And He said, man, you ain't gonna believe what happened at work today. One of his colleagues was going through a custody battle and committed suicide.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
I felt bad for him because I get it. That's what men. I've contemplated it. I've been to therapy about it and counseling. It's why I do what I do now, because that was the month of February in 2016, and 2 weeks later, at the end of February, another Birmingham police officer killed his wife and himself for the same exact reason: going through a custody battle, getting divorced, and left a 3-year-old as an infant. I mean, as an orphan. And I was like, not another man will commit suicide on my watch if I can do something about it. So I got involved, and I was active duty military at the time, and I've since retired. I retired in 2020, but I started my organization in 2016 because I was going through my own custody battle, and it lasted 6 years. And then I became a mediator in 2022. So I've been doing it for about 1.5 years, and now I'm working on arbitration where I can actually make decisions, mediation in Alabama, Georgia, arbitration in Alabama, arbitration. I'm working on national arbitration, but these are things I'm working on because I see so many men need help and they don't know where to go. I didn't know where to go. All I had was, I give credit to God because my prayer life kept me from pulling the trigger and going to therapy and not being scared to ask for help. You know, we're told as men, suck it up, be a man, don't cry, stick your chest out. You know, you better not cry. We're told that since we're 4 years old. And at some point, we're going to release. We're going to let that anger and that frustration out. And unfortunately, it may be on somebody you love. It may be in front of the judge. It's going to come out at the wrong time. And now you're the angry black man. And that's what you don't want to be. So if you can, you know, meet with your fellow compadres who know, you go out with other men who don't know. And now that's your drinking buddy. But drinking is a depressant. Right. So you're crying about your issues, but you're not solving your issues. You're not figuring out a game plan and a way forward on how to get to that next level. And look, I cried myself to sleep for 2 years because I didn't see my son from age 2 to 4. I didn't even know what my son looked like. Wow. And I would have coworkers, you know, come in like, oh, Mr. Robinson, I saw your son on Facebook. I'm like, for real? Can I see? Like, I was begging to see my own child.
Wow.
And so that became problematic. But, you know, I don't talk about that. I said, instead of talking about it, I'm gonna do something about it. So I formulated this organization. I've successfully helped men get custody of their kids, pretty good at it. You know, I've learned because I studied this thing like war, and I figured out how to come at it from a strategic way. And so instead of, I dropped law school and said, you know what, the best thing to do is not go to law school and become a lawyer and be a part of the same problem still broken. I'm gonna go and become a legislator. And then when I tried to go talk to some legislators, I found out how they're just as corrupt and crooked. So I was like, you know, I'd rather be an advocate than to be involved in the mix and the muck and mire. Because if you take back your rights, if you take back the ownership, don't give it to the courts because they're going to do whatever they want to do with it. Right. You got to keep control. And the way to do that is hiring a mediator or an arbitrator and come up with a game plan. But unfortunately, if you have somebody on the other side, the thing about mediation, it has to be mutually agreed. The other party can anybody can terminate mediation at any time. So if the other person doesn't agree, they can go to court because they know I'm gonna wait and see what the judge gonna do. I know several women who now don't have custody because I know the husband and they got custody because the guy was a better fit parent. And another part of what I do is I tell all my guys in the organization, I said, listen, go get CPR certified in child and infant CPR. Go and take as many parenting classes as you can. Go and ingratiate yourself in this person's school system, do homework, be involved, take the kid to school, show that you are the better parent on paper. So when, at least when you go to court, you have a fighting chance. You still might not win, but at least you'll have a fighting chance. And the number one thing, I gotta say this too, the difference between being married and not married. If you're married and you're going through a divorce, the best thing you can do is ask for custody then. Don't get divorced and then try to ask for more time because you're fighting an uphill battle. When you're married, you're so because you're equal when you're married, when you go to court, you got to say, hey, I want custody. But now they want to prove what makes you deserve custody. Why deserve, you know, what school does the child go to? What's the teacher's name? Are you ever involved in homework, this, that, and the third? When you say, well, no, I just let her do it all. Well, if you let her do it all, then she's going to continue to do it. Custody is hereby granted to the mother. That's how that looks. So when, well, I got to go to work. I work the night shift and blah, blah. You work the night shift because there's more money for overtime and this, that, and the third. So you're looking at the money, but the judge ain't looking at the money. They're looking at what's in the best interest of the child. Does that make sense? So you got to make yourself look like you Jesus. You know what I'm saying? She was walking that bad. You got walking that bad boy like,
You
oh,
better be walking on water.
yeah.
Daniel, he said, I didn't know where to go. My siblings, church family, and family helped me through. So many men struggle with having to manage multiple mothers of their children with very little resources in place to equip and empower them to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
And you know what?
that's so across the
That's
board.
why we're doing what we're doing.
Yep. I
You
was one of
know,
them. Didn't know where to go. I myself was a victim of domestic violence, and there's no shelters for men. I think there's like 2 in the whole nation. Now there's 2,000 for women, but men can't get help. And because they can't get help is why men have a suicide rate of 200% higher than women. Because they'll just
wow.
rather off themselves than to deal with that. Because men are
Whew,
told to suck it up.
I tell you, I have never thought about the money that's put into women.
Mm-hmm.
I, but now I know. I mean, that's that. I tell you, Terrence, we're gonna have to do a part 2 of this
Definitely.
because this has been so rich. This has been, I mean, just amazing to share this stage with you. And I pray that everyone who is on here live and who will look at the replay, you know, that you will share it with others. And Terrence, please tell everyone how to follow you, how to know more about you.
Mr. Family First.com, or I'm sorry, .org. MrFamilyFirst.org is my website. You can email me at, and Mr. is an acronym, MSTR, Family First spelled out, .org is my website. And Mr. Family First at gmail.com if you want to email me with any issues, if anybody needs to some mediation services or avocation. So I can advocate or I can mediate, but I can't do both. Because if I advocate, that means, hey, I'm on your side. I'm going to help you get, we're going to put together a strategy to get custody. Well, if I do that, I'm now not necessarily against the mother. Because one thing I don't do, if she's a good mama, I'm not trying to take custody from her. I'm going to sit down with you and her and try to work some things out. But if I'm a mediator, I can't be on anybody's side. I have to be neutral. So mediation and advocacy are 2 different things. So I tell people, what are you hiring me for? If you're hiring me to mediate, then I'll sit down with both parties, and I'm not your friend, and both parties will pay. So she pay half, he pay half. So neither one of you are more apt to walk away from this, because anybody can quit mediation at any time. I can cancel mediation services if I don't think if I think this thing is going off the rails. But if you want me to advocate for you, then I'm on your side. You pay me to come work with you on putting together a strategy on what's in the best needs of your child, and we help put you together with an attorney, because I'm not an attorney. I don't give legal advice. What I do is I tell myself I tell people I'm the Nick Saban of family law. I'm gonna help you put together a strategy to win, but I'm not on the field with you. So you don't want to throw that football down the field. So I want you to score and I want you to win.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Please follow Terrence if you need him. Please reach out to him. And this will definitely not be the last time that you see him on this stage. And please join me tomorrow as I continue this life challenge. And don't forget to follow me. I'm on Instagram at I am Tiffany D. Newton, and I'm on Facebook at Tiffany D. Newton. And join our tribe. Actually, Terrence, a part of the tribe as well. The Teach Me Tribe. Check us out on Facebook and also on YouTube as well. All the replays from this live is also on there as well. So I definitely appreciate everyone again for joining us. Thank you again, Terrence, for being here. Definitely appreciate it. You've added a lot of value. And Daniel says thank you as well in the chat.
It's my pleasure.
And we will see you all next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.